Hi, so how have you been since the last video? I hope you have watched the last video and the last two videos, and I hope it has helped you. So now we are going to go into the chapter 3 of this book, Thrive, and I hope you've got your copy. And we're going to talk about what we call bottleneck behaviors. Because everybody wants to thrive, everybody wants to succeed, but there will be some behaviors that we struggle with that stops us from being successful. So what are these behaviors? I call them bottleneck behaviors. They choke us, right? They are the part that stops us from being successful and from getting the kind of goals that we want in our lives and in our careers. So today's topic is going to be on blame. Why do people blame? How do you know if you're a blamer, and how do you stop yourself from blaming? So sit back, and I hope you enjoy this next video on the bottleneck behaviors and on how to get out of a blaming behavior. See you. Hi, good morning. So let's start on this chapter 3 on thrive, and we're going to be talking about bottleneck behaviors, why people don't thrive. So when I wrote this book and I sent this book for a friend to review, this friend is a famous professor who has taught more than 1 million students on how to improve their careers, how to grow and be successful. She made this comment that actually she liked this chapter the most on bottleneck behaviors. Why she liked it the most is because she feels that so many people actually struggle with these bottleneck behaviors, and they actually need to change these behaviors. So she found these chapters very useful. But she also highlighted a problem, and that is people who usually have these bottleneck behaviors, they don't know that they have these bottleneck behaviors, or they don't want to know. And that's really the point. So she told me that she hopes that those people who read this, right, because every one of us actually have these bottleneck behaviors, whether we have it more or we have it less. But the point is, if we know that we have even a little bit or a lot, then what do we do about it? So my point is really to introduce this chapter to help people to realize, do a reflection of themselves so that they can deal with these bottleneck behaviors of why they don't thrive. And the first bottleneck behavior that I want to start with today is this topic called blame. So let me start off with a story about this man. This is a real story, and it happened about 2 years ago when I was writing this book. There was this guy who wrote a long complaint to an airline on why they did not wait for him. He was actually late. He appeared 15 minutes after the plane had taken off. And then he blamed the airline and said, "Why didn't you wait for me?" So it would seem that he had got some big emergency and that's why he was late, right? But actually the point was he went shopping. He was late because he went shopping. And then he came 15 minutes after the plane had departed. So some people actually replied and said that you are supposed to be at the gate boarding about 30 minutes before departure. So if in effect he was not late for 15 minutes, he was actually late for 45 minutes. Now the point is this, he said that he was a business class passenger, so they should wait for him, and it's the airline's fault for not waiting. Which got me thinking, right? How would people actually arrive at such conclusions, making such ridiculous claims just to blame, just to shift the point to somebody else, the responsibility to somebody else? And that is really because, what is blame? Blame is actually a way for us to deal with some form of a pain, some form of embarrassment, pain, or difficulties, something that would actually, in effect, would have actually caused us to have become better if we know how to deal with it. So to start off with this whole chapter on blaming and why people blame and what's it got to do with pain and growth, I want to tell you another story of this little girl called Ava McCain. Ava is an Australian girl, and she grew up with a problem with her hip. So that's why it took a long time for her to learn how to walk. Now, but Ava is actually a very, very capable girl, and she started to learn karate. And she became so good at it eventually that she got her black belt. And she not only got her black belt, but she also started to beat up the guys in her class, and she should beat them in competitions. And now she has a dream to represent Australia in karate in international competitions. And she made this really, really good statement, which I like, and that is, pain is the best teacher, but nobody wants to go to his class. You see, so people naturally will avoid pain if we can, but pain is really something, whether is it the pain of failure, the pain of embarrassment, the pain of not getting things right, the pain of making a mistake. Pain actually is the best teacher, because pain helps us to become better. but we avoid it. Like what Ava says, nobody wants to go to his class because we want to protect ourselves. So what is this thing? Why do people blame? So why people blame is really because people want to shift responsibility. Sometimes when things happen, they don't want to be held accountable. They don't want to say, I'm sorry. So what do? They blame, right? They blame to get out of responsibility, to get out of being responsible for something. The other reason why people blame is that blame makes them a martyr. Oh, they become the victim. It's not their fault, right? They're helpless. Somebody else's fault. And that is falsely cathartic. Now, what do I mean by falsely cathartic? Is that it makes you feel that you have solved the problem, but actually you have not, right? You just push the blame to somebody, but the consequences of your actions will still come back. So it is falsely cathartic because all you manage to do is to lie to yourself, but you have not solved the problem. The third reason why people blame is because blame creates solidarity. Now, what does that mean? Have you ever noticed the people in a company or in an organization who come together and they blame the boss, they blame circumstances, they blame their customers, they blame other people, and they just kind of like build solidarity. They feel that they're not alone. But that's the wrong type of solidarity because you come together and you create a downward spiral for yourself. So that is what they do when they come in together and they share their misery. The fourth reason why people blame is really because they need to have a white knight. Now, what is this white knight thing? Is they want to be rescued. They want somebody to come and solve their problems for them. And when their problems are not solved, whose fault is it? Oh, it's not my fault. It's the white knight's fault. It's always other people's fault for not solving your problems. And of course, the last one is that blame is really a coping mechanism. They do not know what to do. They do not know what actions to take. They do not know how to react. So the first thing they do is to blame somebody. So these are the 5 reasons why people blame. So why blamers don't thrive is because blame is actually a negative reaction that triggers anger or some kind of a negative emotion. And all these negative emotions, they're actually in conflict with creativity. You can't be angry and resentful at the same time and be able to think of creative solutions to your problems. Resentment and creativity just cannot coexist. And that is really because when you blame people, what you have done is you have tricked yourself. Your brain has been tricked that it has found a solution. And because that solution is not you, it's somebody else, so there's nothing you can do. So you give up. So you say, oh, there's nothing I can do about it. Oh, it's not my fault. Oh, there's nothing I should do because somebody else should come and solve this problem. And that is when you stop looking for solutions. You stop looking for answers. And the last reason why blamers don't thrive is because blamers start to live on this false image that they have built for themselves. What is this false image? This false image is, oh, I'm the victim, or oh, it's not my fault. Oh, I'm not the one. I'm perfect. I don't have any problems because the problems are always with other people. Now, what happens after some time is that you start to learn not to take risks. Blamers learn not to take risks because they know it in themselves that they actually can't handle the consequences or they can't handle the problems that will come along with taking action. So they don't take action. They don't take action because they need to protect this false image that they can't do anything wrong because it's always other people's fault. So they have not learned to handle the consequences. They've not grown. They have not matured in that sense. So these are the 3 reasons why blamers don't thrive. I like this saying that says that a man can fail many times, but he is not the failure until he blames someone else. This saying is by John Burroughs, American writer and philosopher. And it's true because every time you fail, you can learn from it. But if you blame someone when you fail, then you are shifting the responsibility of learning and growing to somebody else. And that is why you fail when you blame someone else. Because when you blame, you stop looking for a way out. And when you stop looking for a way out, that's when you will never find success. So I really like this saying about why people fail is really when they blame. So how do you know whether are you a blamer or not? So as I mentioned earlier on, every one of us have these bottleneck behaviors. Just how much do we have and how much do they control us? And how aware are we about these bottleneck behaviors? And then how do we deal with it? So let's run through these 5 points to really ask ourselves very honestly, are we a blamer? And like what we mentioned earlier, we don't want to run away. The whole purpose of this book and this video is not to blame you, but to help you to discover how to overcome these negative bottleneck behaviors. So the first point is, do you find that you engage in negative talk about yourself? Do you always say that, oh, I can't do it, I'm the victim? Do you always feel that you are not able to handle things? The second one is, do you always feel that you are a victim? Do you always feel that other people are doing something to you? Right? When somebody says something, it is against you. When somebody does something, it is out to get you. Do you always feel that you are the victim? The third point is, do you always believe that others have it better than you? I'm not saying that people are better than you, but have it better than you. That means people always have better jobs, better prospects, more happiness, better families, better opportunities. Do you always feel that other people are more lucky than you are? The fourth point is, do you always find yourself blaming others to make yourself feel better? Right? Somebody is successful, you say something negative about them. When somebody does something, you blame them so that you don't feel wrong, you don't feel bad. When you do something wrong, or you know in your heart that you should have done something, but you blame others, so that after a while you tell yourself, oh, actually it's not my fault. You start to feel that it's better about yourself. And the last one is, do you feel you need others to take responsibility for your problems? So you may run into a situation and you have to solve it, but you don't want to solve it. You want to pass it to somebody. And when you pass it to somebody, you say, phew, I don't have to deal with it anymore. But if you feel that way, and if you feel any of these 5 things, then all these indicate those times that you are a blamer. So the point is, how often do you find yourself engaging in these 5 things? Is it very often? Is it sometimes? And what's your reaction when you find yourself blaming? So what we really want to talk about is, how do you break free from this habit of blaming? Why do I call it a habit? It is because it is a way that we behave, and we become so used to it that we find it very hard to change. And we do it naturally, not even thinking about it. That's why it's a habit. But the good news is this: habits can be broken. Habits can change. But we need to know how, and we need to be very deliberate. So let me introduce you to this thing called the blame-free exercise. What's the blame-free exercise? It's to be able to process something and come to an action without blaming anybody. So the first thing you do when something goes wrong is to stop. You need to break the flow. You need to break the flow of your emotions and stop getting angry. Don't react emotionally. Stop. Be very conscious. It takes effort actually to break that momentum of your thoughts and your emotions. The second thing is to think, what results do I want? How do I get it? Because blaming will not get you the results that you want. So switch channels to think about results. And then the last thing to do is to take action. What can I do? What are the list of things I can do? So when you think about a list of things, your brain switches track. Your brain starts to focus on solution and not on blame. So let me give you a simple example. Let's say, for example, I woke up late and I got to work late and I got into trouble. The first thing I might want to do is to get angry and blame my mother for not waking me up, my wife for not waking me up, my dog for not waking me up, the bus for coming late. Stop. Break that thought. Break that flow. And then start to ask, what results do I actually want? Okay, I want to get to work on time. I want to wake up early. I don't want to get scolded by my boss. So what can I do? Make that list of actions. Do I need to buy another alarm clock? Maybe I need 3 alarm clocks. Maybe I need to get somebody to wake me up, get a colleague to call me. Maybe I need to wake up early to do exercises so that I have time later to go to work. I break the sleepiness. What are some of these actions you need to do? So practice this blame-free exercise. Remember, blaming is a habit, and habits can be changed, although it's not easy. So I suggest that whenever you get angry, the first thing you need to do, stop. Break that flow of your emotions. Then think, what results do I want? Then make that list of actions. Now, the last thing I want to do before I end this session is to recommend you to watch this video. It's a funny video about how a wife blames her husband, but more importantly is the lessons behind this video, and that is how blaming actually changes the way your brain works, and really how it destroys relationships, how it actually changes the way you think, and all this actually stop you from thriving and stop you from finding the success that you want. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you for the next video.